Alien Captain watched him rip an apex predator into chunks like nothing. The tale begins in the frenetic heart of Lissara Port, a sprawling hub where the air was thick with the scent of burning plasma, exotic spices, and the cacophony of countless alien tongues. Starships hovered in shimmering docks overhead, casting shifting shadows onto crowded walkways below, while a swirling tide of beings, some cloaked in mist, some armored in iridescent chitin, hurried about their business beneath harsh neon and stuttering banners. Captain Syrah pressed through the throng with a predator's grace. Her skin, a living tapestry of deep crimson and midnight blue scales, drew lingering glances from traders and mercenaries alike. Eyes sharp and glacial, she kept her gaze fixed ahead, ignoring the shouts of vendors hawking synthafruit, the flash of holo ads promising safe passage through unsafe territories. Beneath her travel cloak, the ornate bone-crafted armor at her shoulders marked her as Xylenian, a heritage not lightly displayed in a place where old grudges simmered. She slipped into a shadowed booth nestled in the alcove of the Sable Seraph Cantina. Darkness wrapped the corners, broken only by the flicker of a malfunctioning sign and the cold gleam of the figure already waiting. He was small, wiry, his skin pale under the glow, cybernetic pupils whirring in quick, precise adjustments as she approached. A sly data runner, always 2 steps ahead of trouble and 3 ahead of the law. "You're not on time," Syrah said, voice cool as frost. The runner's lips curled in a sly, practiced smirk. "Port authority's been jumpy since that freighter went missing. Besides, you're hard to lose track of, Captain. Not many Xylenians risk Lissara's underbelly these days." Syrah's eyes narrowed. "I need a human. For a journey through contested space. Someone expendable, but skilled enough to survive. You know the risks." The runner drummed metallic fingers on the table, scanning the crowd with lazy contempt. Most of the good muscles already bought, or too scared to cross the Kalari border. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "But there's one. Mason. Human. Used to be commando, now works freelance extractions. Doesn't scare easy. He's dangerous, but he'll go anywhere for the right price." Syrah followed the runner's glance through the haze. Mason stood at the far end of the cantina, framed by a fractured blue light. He was tall, his build heavy with coiled strength. A jagged scar bisected his eyebrow, and his wary stance set him apart from the posturing toughs nursing drinks nearby. He wore battered leathers, one hand resting on the hilt of an old plasma knife, a survivor's habit. "Introduce us," Syrah said, not bothering to hide the command in her tone. The runner shrugged and slid from the booth, leading her through the crowd. Mason tracked their approach, eyes cold and appraising. The runner made a quick, formal introduction, then melted away, leaving Syrah and Mason standing in wary silence. She didn't waste time. "I need a bodyguard, immediate departure, unknown duration. You'll be moving through enemy space. Discretion is mandatory. Payment will match the risk." Mason's lip twitched. "What's the cargo?" Syrah didn't answer. "You're being hired to keep me alive. The less you know, the better." His gaze lingered on her armor, the set of her jaw. "Double the standard fee," he said, "and I want a guaranteed escape clause. If things go bad, I walk away clean." She raised a brow, caught off guard by his bluntness. Most mercenaries danced around their demands, but Mason's terms were sharp and unyielding. Still, she nodded. "Agreed." He extended a calloused hand. "Transfer half now, half on arrival." Syrah activated her wrist comp, sending the encrypted payment. Mason checked his comm, then looked up, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "Hangar 12 at dawn. Don't be late." Their eyes met. No trust, only a grudging acknowledgement of competence. Then Mason turned, blending into the shadows as if he'd never been there at all. Syrah watched him go, the weight of her mission settling across her shoulders like a physical burden. Beneath her cloak, she pressed a hand to the encrypted drive concealed at her hip, its secrets dangerous enough to shift the balance of power between worlds. She exhaled slowly, steeling herself for what lay ahead. If she lived to deliver it, the fate of countless lives might change. If not, no one would ever know how close they had come to losing everything. Aboard Syrah's vessel, the Nebula Whisper, silence reigned. In the hush of hyperspace, the world reduced to the subtle thrum of engines and the occasional creak of alloy hull. Two figures occupied the cockpit, each an island unto themselves. Syrah's fingers glided over the controls, eyes fixed on the streaming star lines, while Mason brooded in the co-pilot's seat, jaw tight, arms crossed over his chest. The silence stretched, heavy with everything unspoken, until Mason finally broke it. "You know this route is suicide, right?" His voice was rough, but calm. The voice of a man who had counted his odds too many times to flinch now. The Onyx Rift isn't just pirate turf, it's Night Howler territory. Those things gut battlecruisers for sport. Syrah's gaze never wavered from the display. "I am aware." He leaned forward, studying the navigation holo. "There are safer routes, longer, but longer is not an option." She cut him off, her tone as unyielding as obsidian. "We're already being tracked. The rift will mask our signal." He let out a low whistle. "You're betting our lives on those odds." She shot him a sideways glance. "You were paid to get me through, not to question my decisions." Mason's lips quirked, almost a smile. "That's exactly why I'm questioning them. You hired a specialist, not a drone. If you want to make it to Verdanus in one piece, you'll need more than luck and bravado." Syrah's tail, usually wrapped tight around her waist, flicked once in irritation. Yet behind her rigid composure, she found herself weighing his words. Mason's tactical awareness, the way he scanned threat vectors and exit points, reminded her uncomfortably of her own instincts. She stifled any sign of approval, eyes returning to the starlit void. Hours bled away, punctuated only by the muted beeps of the ship's systems. Mason drifted through the vessel, checking bulkheads and power couplings with a soldier's restlessness, while Syrah stayed at the helm, mind replaying encrypted messages and ancient warnings. Their uneasy truce finally fractured when Mason, pacing back into the cockpit, fixed her with a sharp look. "You keep glancing at that drive. Want to tell me what's on it that's worth both our heads?" She hesitated, weighing trust against necessity. The shadows flickered across her features, deepening the blue of her scales. Finally, she slid the drive from its hidden pouch and placed it on the console between them. "This is not ordinary data," she said quietly. "It contains evidence, genetic records, comparative analyses, proof that humans and Xylenians share rare compatibilities at the molecular level. Not just shared ancestry, but the potential for something more, unity, or destruction." Mason stared at her, disbelief warping into grim understanding. "You're saying we could be allies, or enemies, if the wrong people get hold of this?" She nodded. "There are factions on both sides that would kill to bury this, others who would burn worlds to exploit it." He raked a hand through his hair, tension thickening the air between them. "You know you're carrying a spark to a powder keg, right?" "I know." Her voice was barely more than a whisper. The ship's alarms shattered the moment. Klaxons wailed, red light flooding the corridor. Syrah sprang to her feet, slamming her palm against the control panel. The engine readouts flared red, and a sickly chill swept through the decks. "Sabotage!" Mason snapped, already bolting for engineering. "I'll check the core, get us a vector out of here." Syrah's fingers danced over the helm, rerouting dwindling power, but the main drive sputtered and died. The temperature plunged, breath misting in the freezing air. Emergency batteries kicked in, just enough to maintain life support. Mason returned, breathless, face grim. Thermal couplings are shot. Someone rigged them to fail. No time for blame. Sira punched up a star chart. Nearest settlement is Verdanis. If we divert auxiliary power, we can limp there on thrusters. He nodded. Set course. I'll prep crash harnesses. The nebula whisper limped through the dying light, engines coughing their last. The world outside shifted from the blackness of space to the emerald cloud of Verdanis's atmosphere. Sira fought the yoke as turbulence battered the hull, Mason barking rapid-fire status updates as fire danced along the viewport. "Brace!" she shouted. Metal screamed as the ship tore through the jungle canopy, finally grinding to a shuddering halt amid bioluminescent foliage. For a moment, only the hiss of cooling metal and the frantic beat of their hearts filled the silence. Mason released his harness first, eyes sweeping the cabin for injuries. "You good?" Sira nodded, rubbing blood from a shallow cut across her brow. "We're alive. For now." The sun had already begun to sink as they gathered supplies, weaponry, rations, the precious drive. Outside, the alien jungle glowed with phosphorescent light. Towering stalks and pulsing vines arched overhead, casting shifting patterns of gold and violet across the forest floor. They moved quickly, Sira leading, Mason covering their rear. Every snap of a branch, every distant growl set nerves on edge. Something watched them. She could feel it in the prickling scales at the back of her neck. Mason edged closer, voice pitched low. "We're being hunted." She nodded. "Night Howler. Stay close." He offered a grim smile. "After you, Captain." They pressed deeper into the jungle, following the pale thread of a river. As darkness thickened, the sense of pursuit grew. Sira's breathing quickened, her tail twitching in warning. Mason's hand hovered near his holster, muscles coiled for violence. Finally, Mason broke the silence, voice softer now. "You never told me your real name." Sira hesitated. Then, in a gesture of rare trust, said, "Sirai. Only my kin know it. Use it wisely." He nodded, something like respect passing between them. "Thank you, Sirai." For a moment, suspicion faded. The dense alien gloom pressed in, but camaraderie sparked. Tenuous, fragile, yet undeniable. The spell shattered with a snarl that ripped through the jungle. Something massive crashed through the undergrowth. A night howler, more monstrous than legend. It stood twice their height, sinews rippling beneath shadowy fur, claws as long as Sira's forearm, eyes burning with primal hunger. The beast lunged. Sira dodged, but not fast enough. Its claws raked across her side, drawing blood and a ragged cry. Mason was there in an instant, rage igniting in his eyes. He hurled himself at the night howler, fists flying with a ferocity that defied reason. Bones cracked beneath his blows, his movements blurring with speed no ordinary human should possess. Sira, clutching her wound, stared in shock. Mason's hands locked around the creature's jaws, forcing them apart with impossible strength. He drove the beast to the ground, slamming it with a brutal finality. When the night howler at last fell still, Mason staggered back, breath heaving, face splattered with blood, not his own. Sira looked at him, shaken, not only by the violence of the encounter, but by the revelation that Mason was far more than he appeared. Something deep and unsettling stirred inside her. Fear, yes, but also a fierce, growing intrigue. He knelt beside her, tearing a strip from his shirt to staunch her bleeding. "You're hurt." She met his eyes, searching for answers. "What are you?" Mason only shook his head, a hint of sorrow ghosting across his features. "Someone who's not supposed to exist." As the jungle settled around them, the dynamic between them shifted, suspicion yielding to something more complicated, camaraderie edged with wonder, trust tempered by mystery. Sirai let him tend her wound, the weight of the night pressing close, both of them changed by what had transpired in the alien dark. In the cramped quarters of the Verdanis outpost, forced proximity pressed Syrah and Mason together, their secrets hovering like ghosts in the recycled air. The room was barely wider than a cargo pod, walls sweating with condensation, power flickering as the storm outside battered the station's defenses. Mason unpacked the field medkit, the harsh strip lighting revealing blood and dirt smeared across Syrah's scales. She sat on the edge of the cot, one hand pressed to her side, watching him. Her voice was cold and cutting, the veneer of command slipping. "How did you do it, Mason? No ordinary human could overpower a night howler." "I want the truth." He hesitated, knuckles white as he cracked open a vial of antiseptic. "Humans aren't as fragile as you think," he muttered. "We evolved under higher gravity than most species. Denser bones, more muscle. Stories get exaggerated, but—" He met her gaze, something raw flickering in his eyes. "I'm not ordinary. I was part of a classified program. Augmentation, splicing, neural reinforcements. It's all in here." He tapped his temple, then looked away. She reached for his arm, studying the skin beneath the torn sleeve. Faint surgical scars traced the underside, old and puckered, some almost lost beneath new tissue. "You're enhanced," she said, softer now, the realization coloring her words. "No wonder you fight like a feral beast." He forced a crooked smile. "I paid for every upgrade. Some nights I wonder what's left of me." For a moment she let her fingers linger, feeling the heat of his skin, the tension coiled beneath it. "We know so little about your kind. The data drive barely scratches the surface." She paused, searching his face. "What else don't I know, Mason?" He cleaned the wound at her side with surprising gentleness, his calloused hands steady, voice gruff but tender. "You know what matters now. We both have things we'd rather forget." He glanced at her scales, at the blood welling along the gash. "This'll sting." She gritted her teeth, hissing as the antiseptic burned. He worked quickly, sealing the wound with a biofoam patch, careful not to press too hard. The storm outside rose to a fever pitch, thunder rattling the metal shell of the outpost. Suddenly, Syrah's comlink chirped, a burst of static preceding a coded transmission. She pressed the receiver to her ear, heart pounding. A familiar voice crackled through. Elder Karen, her mentor since childhood. "Syrah, you must listen. You were never meant to succeed. The Council betrayed you. The mission was a trap from the beginning. They sent you as bait, not as hope. Trust no one. They're coming." The line went dead. Syrah stared at the comm in numb disbelief, the words sinking like knives. Her world tilted, everything she'd believed cast into shadow. Mason watched her, reading the devastation in her eyes. "What is it?" She swallowed, voice barely a whisper. "The mission was never meant to succeed. I'm a pawn. The Council betrayed me." He moved to her side, anger flashing across his face. "Then we're both running from the same enemy. My own commanders. After they got what they wanted, they tried to erase me. Augmentations, classified data. They call us assets, not people." He spat the word like a curse. Their shared betrayal forged a new bond, the weight of their secrets pressing them together as surely as the four steel walls. Syrah reached for the data drive, clutching it to her chest. "If we survive, this changes everything. Not just for our worlds, but for us." Lightning seared the sky, illuminating the room in stark white. Rain hammered the windows, the storm's rage echoing the tumult inside them. Mason settled beside her on the cot, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Syrah's voice broke the silence, trembling and fierce. "My family's legacy is war. Every ancestor was a soldier, a leader, or a martyr. I was supposed to prove we could be more than that. Now, she faltered, eyes bright with unshed tears. Now I don't know who I am or what I'm fighting for. He took her hand, rough fingers closing around her claws. You're not alone, Sarai. They tried to turn me into a weapon. When I escaped, I thought if I ran far enough, I could leave it behind. But it's always there. The strength, the nightmares, the guilt. She traced the jagged scar over his eyebrow, her touch reverent, curious. You hide it well. He smiled, rueful and sad. You see through me better than most. The room grew smaller, air charged with the storm's energy and their own rising need. Emotional barriers crumbled, pain, anger, and loneliness mixing into something raw and intimate. Syrah's breath hitched as she leaned closer, her scales catching the glow of the emergency light. Let me see you, she whispered. He let her, letting down the walls he'd built for so long. She ran her fingers along the surgical lines on his shoulders, down his arm, marveling at the way flesh and technology merged beneath his skin. He shuddered, vulnerable in a way no physical wound could render him. The moment held, fragile, electric. Mason cupped her face, thumb brushing the edge of her jaw where scales met softer skin. I've wanted this since you called me by your true name, he confessed, voice thick. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. I never thought I'd want this at all. Lightning flashed again, flooding the room with silver. Syrah leaned forward, tracing his scar with trembling fingers. Their lips met, first hesitant, then urgent. All the pain and longing crashing through in a single, shattering kiss. He pulled her into his arms, careful not to press her wound, and she clung to him as if he were the only safe thing in a universe gone mad. The storm outside howled, but within those narrow walls they found shelter in each other, lovers as well as allies, bound now by passion as much as fate. That night, as thunder rolled and secrets faded into darkness, Syrah and Mason crossed every boundary, cultural and personal. When dawn finally broke over Verdanis, they lay entwined on the narrow cot, changed, no longer fugitives fleeing alone, but a single force, united by trust, desire, and the hope of a future neither had dared imagine. Morning brought crisis, sharp and cold as the light that cut through the narrow viewport. Syrah stirred in Mason's arms, his warmth pressed against her back, the memory of last night still pulsing beneath her skin. She lay quiet for a moment, listening to the steady thrum of his heart, before turning to study his face. Lines softened by sleep, scars made gentler by peace. But there was nothing gentle about the future that pressed in on them. She traced the faint surgical marks on his shoulder. Tell me, she said, voice low, about the project that made you. Mason's eyes flickered open, the blue of them storm bright. He didn't flinch from the question. It started with volunteers, or so they said. Augmentation was supposed to make us better, stronger, faster, harder to kill. They broke us down to our atoms and rebuilt what they liked. When we finished our usefulness, we were marked for decommission. He looked away, jaw clenched. Most of us never made it out. I did. Barely. Her fingers tightened on his skin, a silent anchor. How did you escape? He let out a long, uneven breath. I learned the difference between following orders and surviving. When my commanding officer gave the kill code, I ran. I've been running ever since. Syrah pressed her forehead to his, emotion sharp in her chest. You're proof, Mason. Everything on that drive, the possibility of change, of unity. Our being together proves it's real. He caught her hand, held it to his heart. Then we can't let them take it. A shrill chime shattered the moment. Syrah reached for her comm, heart pounding as she scanned the incoming message. The words seared into her mind. Sira deemed traitor. Accused of selling secrets to human radicals. Arrest on sight. She stared at the device, blood running cold. They've branded me a traitor. They're coming. Mason sat up, muscles tensed, eyes hard. How much time do we have? Even as he spoke, the distant whine of engines grew louder. Outside, the shadow of a Zelenian warship fell across the jungle, its searchlight sweeping through the dawn mist. Sira's comm buzzed again, this time an encrypted warning from a sympathetic contact. Assassins inbound. You have minutes, not hours. No time for hesitation. Sira dragged on her armor, Mason grabbing his battered gear. The outpost trembled as a barrage shook the ground. Through the window, Sira glimpsed armored figures, Xylenian shock troops, closing in. Back route, Mason barked, checking his weapon. I'll cover. Move. They darted through smoke-filled corridors, blaster fire scorching the metal walls. Sira clutched the data drive, her mind a blur of codes and escape vectors. Mason moved like a shadow, dropping 2 pursuers with lethal efficiency. At the hangar bay, a battered smuggler's ship idled, its pilot, an old 4-armed Tavari named Lox, waving frantically. On board! Now! Lox bellowed, engines roaring. They dove through the hatch as Mason slammed the door shut, Sira's heart pounding as the ship hurtled skyward, lasers slicing through the clouds behind them. Below, Verdanis shrank into haze, the warship's wrath fading as they broke atmo. The cockpit was chaos, alarms blaring, Lox cursing in 3 languages. Sira slumped into the co-pilot seat, Mason at her side, their hands finding each other even in the madness. Lox shot her a look. You just painted a target on my ship, Captain. Sira's jaw set. Add it to my tab. As Verdanis fell away, the weight of pursuit only sharpened Sira's clarity. She watched Mason, his presence, his loyalty, and understood, with a sudden, aching certainty, why the Council feared them. Their relationship wasn't just forbidden, it was revolutionary. The drive in her pocket was proof, but what they had was the catalyst. We're not safe yet, Mason said quietly. What's our next move? She took a steadying breath. We head to Meridian Spire. There's a diplomatic enclave there. Envoy Jalen owes me a favor. If we get the data to him, he can grant us sanctuary. Or at least buy us time. Lox cackled from the pilot's chair. Meridian's crawling with Council and Syndicate. You'll need to split up to get anywhere near the envoy. Sira nodded, knowing he was right. We'll land on the lower platforms, enter separately, meet at Jalen's chambers. If either of us is compromised, the other delivers the drive. Mason squeezed her hand. We'll make it. When Meridian Spire came into view, its gleaming towers spiraling into clouds, banners of 100 worlds fluttering in solar winds, hope mingled with dread. The ship slipped into the shadowed underbelly, avoiding the main ports, and Sira readied herself to vanish into the city's labyrinth. They stood at the airlock, bracing for separation. Sira pressed her scaled palm to Mason's chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart. No words passed between them, only a silent promise, fierce and unspoken. Then, with a last lingering look, they vanished into the crowd. Sira moved like a shadow, hood drawn low, blending into the kaleidoscope of species and uniforms that filled Meridian's endless corridors. Security drones hovered overhead, banners proclaimed unity, but suspicion crackled in every whisper. She navigated checkpoints with forged credentials, pausing only to send Mason a coded ping. Still safe. She was steps from Envoy Jalen's suite when the trap closed. Elder Karen waited in the antechamber, flanked by High Arbiter Voss and 2 armed guards. The disappointment in Karen's eyes was a blade sharper than any weapon. Sirai, Karen intoned, voice heavy with regret. You were always too bold for your own good. Sira's hand went to her hip, but the guards' weapons were faster. "You sent me to fail," she said, voice raw. "This whole mission, just a ploy to expose me and seize the data." High Arbiter Voss stepped forward, face a mask of cold authority. "You betrayed your kind by consorting with the human. Hand over the drive and your death will be swift." Syrah's spine stiffened, fury burning through her fear. "You fear what I carry because you know it's the truth, and you'll never get it from me." As she spoke, her mind raced, calculating angles, memorizing guard positions, searching for any sign of Mason. But the walls closed in, and her chances narrowed with every heartbeat. Across Meridian, Mason moved through the underlevels, every sense on high alert. He reached the rendezvous point, Jalen's private offices, only to find them swarming with council security. A stun baton cracked against his head, dropping him to his knees. As he struggled to rise, 2 more guards pinned his arms, binding him with electrified manacles. "Asset recovered," one intoned into a comm. "Prepare for transfer to Facility 9. Mason fought, but the enhancements that had saved his life now made him a prize. They would dissect him, tear every secret from his body, destroy what little of himself he still owned. At the edge of a cell, he caught a glimpse of Syrah's face, fearless, furious, reflected in the polished steel of a council officer's badge. He understood, in that instant, what she would risk for him, and what he had to hold on to. Back in the antechamber, Syrah's mind reeled as she pieced together the final betrayal. The council had never wanted peace, only control. And now they had Mason, the drive, and the means to crush the hope she carried. But Syrah was Xylenian, born of warriors, and love had made her stronger than fear. She set her jaw, meeting Karen's gaze with fire in her eyes. She would rescue Mason, or lose everything that mattered. And as the storm gathered over Meridian Spire, Syrah prepared to fight for the future they both deserved. Syrah raced through Meridian Spire, heart pounding, senses razor sharp. Every corridor was a gauntlet. Patrols in blue and gold armor swept the walkways, scanners flickered along the walls, and alarms blared overhead. She ducked into shadows, scaled maintenance ladders, and slipped past biometric checkpoints, guided only by the desperate need to reach Mason before it was too late. She caught his signal, a faint pulsing beacon from his wrist comm, moving swiftly through the lower docks. A transport shuttle waited there, its hull emblazoned with the council's sigil, guarded by 2 armored sentries. Syrah studied the patrol pattern, noting the brief window between passes, then moved. She disabled the outer sensors with a stolen access code, slid beneath the docking rails, and crawled into the tight confines of a maintenance shaft. Every breath echoed in the metal tunnel. She kept her mind focused, ignoring the ache in her side and the memory of betrayal that threatened to slow her down. On board the shuttle, Mason's world was reduced to steel and the burn of manacles around his wrists. 2 guards flanked him, blasters drawn. The shuttle vibrated as engines spun up, and a voice crackled over the intercom. "Next stop, Laboratory 9. Keep the asset sedated." Mason glanced up, eyes cold and calculating. His augmented strength surged as he twisted his wrists, feeling the manacles strain. One guard stepped closer, weapon leveled. "Settle down, human. You're not going anywhere." Mason met his gaze, then smiled, a grim, wild smile. "You should check your locks." He jerked his hands, breaking the manacles with a metallic snap. In the same motion, he surged forward, driving his shoulder into the guard's chest. The second tried to raise his blaster, but Mason disarmed him with brutal precision. Alarms blared, red lights strobing across the compartment. At that moment, a service hatch in the bulkhead slid open. Syrah emerged, eyes blazing, plasma knife in hand. "Mason!" He grinned, relief raw in his voice. "Took you long enough." They moved as one, Syrah darting low, slashing a guard's knee, Mason dropping another with a single punch. They reached the cockpit, where a terrified pilot tried to trigger the distress beacon. Syrah slammed him against the console, her tail lashing. "We're taking control. Set a course out of council space, now." The pilot's hands shook as he obeyed, but it was already too late. Sirens shrieked, and the viewport filled with the angular shapes of Xylenian fighters, their engines flaring to life. Mason settled into the pilot's seat, fingers flying over unfamiliar controls. "Hang on," he muttered. "I'll get us clear." Syrah braced herself, scanning the tactical readouts. "They're closing in. We won't outrun them." Mason's jaw set. "Then we'll outfly them." He yanked the throttle, sending the shuttle into a spiraling dive. Outside, the debris field loomed, twisted metal, shattered drones, relics of old battles drifting like ghosts. He threaded the shuttle through the chaos, rolling and weaving as plasma bolts flashed past the hull. Syrah worked the weapons console, launching countermeasures. Flares and chaff blossomed behind them, detonating as missiles streaked close. She fired at the nearest fighter, scoring a glancing hit, but more poured in from every angle. "Shields at 20%, she shouted. Mason gritted his teeth, sweat running down his brow. "We're not going to make it." The shuttle shuddered as a blast tore through the port engine. Warning klaxons howled, smoke filling the cockpit. Syrah struggled to keep the systems online, rerouting power to life support. The data drive pressed like a brand against her ribs. "We can't let them take us," Mason said, voice grim. "Not the drive, not you." Syrah's hands flew over the comms. "There's one chance. I'll transmit the data to Jalen's aid. If we don't survive, the truth will." She linked the drive to the ship's uplink, hands steady as she entered the encryption code. The upload bar crawled across the display, seconds stretching into eternity. Outside, the fighters tightened their formation. Mason aimed the crippled shuttle at a narrow gap in the wreckage, but a plasma bolt ripped through the controls. Sparks flew, the main engine sputtered and died. "We're dead in the water," Mason said, voice harsh. "Anything?" "Uploading. Almost there," Syrah replied, watching the numbers tick up. 80%. 90. The shuttle lurched as a boarding clamp locked onto the hull. Red lights strobed, and the air filled with the shriek of metal on metal. Syrah gripped Mason's hand, her eyes fierce. "If this is the end—" "It isn't," he growled, refusing defeat. "Not for us." The upload completed, 100%. Syrah slammed the transmit button, sending the drive's contents into the digital ether. The secret was out now, beyond the Council's reach. The viewport filled with Xylenian ships, their cannons charging, energy building to a lethal crescendo. Syrah and Mason stood together, backs against the console, weapons drawn, every muscle braced. A sudden blaze of light erupted, blinding and absolute. Syrah shielded her eyes, expecting destruction. But instead, the cockpit filled with the deep, resonant hum of human star cruiser engines. The light resolved into the massive form of the horizon's edge, armored hull agleam, cannons blazing. It cut through the Xylenian blockade, unleashing a storm of fire that scattered the enemy ships in all directions. The comm crackled. "Shuttle, this is Commander Reyes of the Horizon's Edge. Stand by for tractor beam. You're safe now." Syrah let out a shaky breath, hope crashing over her in a tidal wave. "Acknowledged, Commander." "We're ready." Mason slumped in the pilot's chair, laughter bubbling from his chest. "Never thought I'd say it, but I'm glad to see the cavalry." As the tractor beam locked on, the shuttle's battered hull groaned, then steadied. Outside, the horizon's edge mopped up the last of the council fighters, its shields holding against a desperate return fire. Inside, Syrah squeezed Mason's hand, her voice fierce and soft. "You risked everything for me." He smiled, exhaustion and love written across his face. "We did it for each other." The shuttle docked with the human cruiser. The hatch slid open, revealing an armed escort and Commander Reyes herself, a tall, dark-eyed woman with the bearing of a legend. She looked Sira up and down, nodding once. "Welcome aboard. You're safe. For now." Sira stepped onto the deck, Mason at her side, surrounded by the thrum and bustle of allies. Relief, sharp and overwhelming, nearly brought her to her knees. As the doors closed behind them and the ship jumped to hyperspace, Sira knew the fight was not over. But for the first time, hope burned brighter than fear. On board the Horizon's Edge, Sira and Mason sat side by side in a stark briefing chamber, the echo of battle still humming in their blood. The ship's walls thrummed with the energy of a vessel on high alert, but here, beneath the blue-white glare of the overhead lights, they felt both exposed and oddly safe. Across from them, Commander Reyes studied their faces with the keen appraisal of a veteran who'd seen too much, and who knew what it meant to survive against impossible odds. Sira kept her chin lifted, scales along her neck shifting in nervous patterns, her fingers entwined with Mason's beneath the table. Their touch was a secret promise, hidden from official eyes. Mason's thumb traced slow circles against her palm, grounding her as the debriefing began. "Let me be clear," Reyes said, her tone both measured and sharp. "You are the center of the storm that just broke across the galaxy. The data drive you transmitted reached every major node before anyone could stop it. Both the Xylenian and human governments are in chaos. Protests, debates, celebrations. Some want your heads. Others want to build statues." Mason offered a dry smile. "That's the price for telling the truth, I suppose." Reyes's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Your evidence forced a reckoning. We just received word. Elder Karen and High Arbiter Voss have been arrested for treason. They won't be scapegoating you any longer. The Council can't hide what you've exposed." The news hit Sira like a tidal surge, relief and sorrow crashing together. She thought of Elder Karen's betrayal, the years of mentorship tainted by secrets. Her hand tightened on Mason's. Reyes leaned forward, lowering her voice. "There are factions on both sides who see you as a threat. And now, you're also a symbol. Of unity, of rebellion, of change. The choice is yours. We can offer new identities in Sanctuary, or you can stand before the councils and make your case. Either way, you're not alone." Sira met Mason's gaze, silent understanding passing between them. She had never imagined herself as the face of a movement, nor as the heart of a revolution. Yet here she was, entwined with this human, their very existence a challenge to old certainties. Reyes rose, her silhouette crisp against the observation window. "Think it over. You've earned your future. Whatever you decide it should be." She left them alone, the door hissing shut behind her. Sira let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It's over, isn't it? The running, the hiding." Mason shook his head gently. "It's only just begun. Now the whole galaxy is watching." Sira managed a tremulous smile. "They can watch. I won't hide what we are." He brushed a thumb over her knuckles, voice low and warm. "We're living proof that everything they feared and hoped is possible. You and me." Hand in hand, they rose from the table, wandering through the humming corridors until the ship's bustle faded behind them. They found the observation deck, wide, curving glass opening onto the sweep of stars and nebulae. Alone at last, the galaxy lay before them, infinite and alive. Sira pressed her forehead to the cool glass, her breath fogging the surface. The stars seemed closer than ever, scattered like hope across black velvet. She turned, voice barely more than a whisper. "What will we become, Mason?" He stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, his presence a steady anchor against the tide of uncertainty. "We're the proof they needed. and the change they fear. She leaned back into him, feeling his heartbeat thrum against her shoulder. I spent my whole life fighting for my people's approval, trying to live up to a legacy of war and sacrifice, but all it ever brought me was isolation. She closed her eyes. Now I just want to be true, to myself, to us. He kissed her temple, slow and deliberate. We don't have to hide anymore, Sarai. Not from them, not from ourselves. She faced him fully, scales aglow in the starlight, differences and scars on full display. Our worlds will resist. They'll try to twist what we are into something dangerous. He cupped her cheek, voice fierce. Let them. We'll stand before the councils. We'll speak our truth. Not as pawns or fugitives, but as equals, as partners. Her lips found his, the kiss slow and deliberate. A vow, not just for survival, but for defiance and for hope. She tasted the salt of old wounds, the promise of new beginnings. The universe, vast and unknowable, felt suddenly intimate. They broke apart, breathless. No matter what they ask of us, she said, we'll face it together. He smiled, the harshness of war and betrayal softening into something genuine and bright. And when it's done, when the talking and the fighting are over, let's find a place of our own. Somewhere no one can find us, unless we want them to. A laugh bubbled in her chest, light and unguarded. Deal, human. The ship drifted through cosmic dust, the path ahead full of uncertainty. Yet Syrah felt the burdens of the past slipping from her shoulders. With Mason beside her, the universe no longer seemed cold or indifferent. Instead, it shimmered with possibility. A calm alert chimed, a reminder of the work still ahead. Syrah took Mason's hand, their fingers lacing tightly. Ready? He asked, and she could see the future reflected in his eyes. Brave, unbroken, wide open. I am now, she replied. Together they left the quiet sanctuary of the observation deck, moving toward whatever awaited. Conflict, peace, or something no one had ever imagined. They would testify before the councils, stand as proof that difference could mean unity, that love could be revolution. As the horizon's edge glided toward the unknown, the stars beckoned. For the first time, Syrah was ready to embrace them, knowing that, whatever the future held, she would face it with Mason, united by love, defiance, and the promise of a new beginning. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.